You're It. I'm Amanda Malcolm, and you're listening to You're It, Girl, a podcast focused on you and what propels you, because that past, it does not define you. Your time is now, and you're it, girl. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to You're It, Girl. Thank you, as always, for listening, for your episode ideas, and for supporting the mission of the podcast. It means the world to me. Before I begin, I just wanted to let you know, if you're watching on YouTube and my face looks a little bit weird, Nick, the production manager, says that it doesn't, but I feel like it kind of looked a little bit like from the Hunger Games a little bit. And the reason being is because I had a PRF injection in my face. And if you don't know what this is, orthopedic surgeons have been using this, it's called PRP. They inject it into a wound site, and it promotes healing and blood circulation and reduces inflammation and that sort of thing. So PRF is similar to PRP. They basically draw your blood and then they separate the plasma from the blood and then they inject that. And cosmetically, it's again supposed to be something that kind of promotes collagen production. So anyway, because I'm getting old, a lot of the girls at MD Skin Lounge recommended this. And so now I have that. So we'll see in 48 hours how it actually works. But this episode today, I actually already recorded this several months ago, and then decided after I recorded it to not release it and have Nick completely delete it. And he was so kind about it because the episode took a really long time to record, and then I abandoned the entire thing and decided to re-record it now. And the reason why I abandoned it was because at the time I was experiencing this crazy writer's block. And I talk about this a little bit in a couple episodes that you may have heard within the last couple of months. I couldn't really figure out what was actually going on, but I just did not have any ideas at all that sounded good that I wanted to record. Something that was kind of controlling my mind a little bit. And then not randomly, but pretty much overnight, this was completely lifted. And then all the ideas kind of came flooding back to me. And I'd actually already had this date scheduled to record this episode. So of course, since it was fresh on my mind, I decided that I would record this thing. And the reason why I decided not to launch it after I recorded it is because of the intense emotions and feelings that I was having when I was writing it and when I was actually recording it. And clearly these things were radiating through my entire body. And they were at the forefront of my mind at the time. And when you're in that space, it's really difficult to regulate your emotions and see things clearly, and to logically process what's actually going on. And so now that several months have actually passed, there's just obviously been more healing, more conversations about it, more clarity with my life coach, more understanding. And this is why, in the heat of the moment, when you record something and then you listen to it, you're like, oh, wow, there's a lot behind that I'm thinking about, right? And so this is why in the heat of the moment, sometimes it's a good idea to take a step back and breathe deep and repeat. This is one of my mantras. Breathe deep and repeat. Otherwise, you might go a little bit overboard in what you're sharing. And that is because you can't control your own body and your own emotions. And that is what this episode is actually about. This episode is about control. And over the years, I've met many women that have been in controlling relationships and not really fully understood the extent of what it looked like when you're in it. And most importantly, how does it begin so that you can notice it, so that way you can remove yourself from it before you actually get too deep. Now, Alora Tran actually did an episode with me on control in a relationship several months ago. This was actually episode 18. It's called Red Light, Green Light, if you haven't listened to it. And she shares her story of how she met this person, how she was in this controlling relationship, and it got very physical, and how she actually at the end got out and how brave she was to get through that. And by the way, she did just have a baby. So if you know her, do reach out to her and say congratulations. It was a boy, and I'm really excited for her. So what are the early signs of control in a relationship? What happens when that person who presents as your knight in shining armor suddenly becomes the dark knight? How do you address the signs of control? And then most importantly, how do you take your power back? How do you say no? And how do you walk away? Which is the most difficult part. So I'm going to share 2 stories. And the reason why I'm sharing the stories is because stories obviously help us connect to one another. And that's what we do on this episode. That's what we do on the show. We share stories, we share experiences, and we talk about, what's happening in these experiences, what we think, what we feel, and most importantly, how we overcome these things, how later on these things might come up as triggers, but how we can recognize them as strengths and how they really become our superpowers and really give us the strength to propel ourselves into our purpose and our passion. That's what the whole show is about. That's what our mission is about. So up until recently, I really only had one experience with a controlling boy. And I say boy because I was 17. I think he was probably 19. So we were similar age. He was a baseball player. And I'll explain why the baseball player thing is funny later. So this relationship was brief. But it escalated really, really quickly. And this is actually one of the first signs. The relationship will escalate very, very quickly. And it's going to seem like it's incredible. Like you've met the love of your life. Like this is serendipitous. Like this is something that is even at 17 and being naive and not having been in many relationships before, like it feels so intense that you mistakenly think that this is supposed to be like your future person because of how high you feel like when you are together. This is actually love bombing, which we're not going to talk about on this episode right now, but that is definitely a red flag. A relationship shouldn't progress so quickly and escalate so fast. But in these types of relationships, you're going to notice it fast. The first date is going to turn into 4 dates in 1 week quickly. And pretty soon you're spending all of your time together. So with this particular boy, we had 1 date and then we were pretty much inseparable. We were playing, we were young. So we weren't sleeping together yet. We were playing like, teenage baseball. And I say baseball because, we were like kind of touching on some bases, if you know what I mean. And so he would say things like, how many times have you done that? Or, we did that kind of quickly. Like, you must have more experience than what you're saying. I must not be that special, not trusting, what I said. And then all the while, I would just be reassuring him, obviously, that he was, special. And then he'd want to know details about certain things and then use them against me later. And he'd get angry if I was late or if I wasn't on time or if I wasn't responsive right away, thinking that I was thinking about someone else or with someone else. And then one day, he showed up. We had a plan. He showed up to pick me up from my house. And I was running a little bit late because I was working at the time and never really got out at the same time. He'd showed up early. So me being late meant that I was even later than what he expected me to be. And he was very upset and very angry, thinking that I had lied, that I was with someone else, that I wasn't where I said that I was. And he got a little bit physical. So he grabs me by the shoulders and presses me up against his truck. And he's, not yelling, but talking very loudly, sternly, looking really directly like into my eyes. It's a little bit scary. He's a bigger guy, definitely probably like 6'2", muscular. And so you're in this situation and you're going, wow, this is a really I know I've seen him get upset before, but this is kind of an extreme reaction. So we're supposed to go somewhere. I don't really want to go now, but I'm a little bit afraid. So I do get into the car and now his tone of voice escalates. Now he's more angry. He's grabbing the steering wheel. He's kind of like turning it, a little bit erratically and telling me things like, I hope you get out of this car alive. Sorry, that's not funny. But in the moment, like when I talk about it now, I think, wow, how did I get myself, how did I get myself into this situation? I should have just never gotten in the car. But when you are in a relationship with someone that you start to become close to and this behavior happens, it's very unlike what they've shown you so far. So you almost kind of think that you will be able to calm them down, which is what I did do eventually. That night I went home. He kissed me goodbye. He did not spend the night. I knew that I would have to break up with him the next day. All I wanted in that moment was to get safely out of the car and to get home. So the next day, I did call him and broke up with him. Obviously, as you can imagine, he did not take it well. Swearing at me, calling me mean, derogatory names, saying that I'd never get better than him. I was 17, so I'm literally in my head like, dude, come on. The next day, he does show up at my house. I'm not there. It's nighttime. I'm at work. He's throwing rocks at the window, trying to get our attention. My roommate is home at the time. She calls my place of work and tells me what's going on, says that she's just going to pretend that no one's there. So the next day, I actually had to call him again and remind him of what had happened. And then he had told me that the reason why he had come over was to set the record straight that he is the one that had broken up with me. So I let him have this win. And the relationship ended, obviously rather quickly, which generally, a breakup, and unfortunately, some people get back together after these things, but we were so young, social media wasn't really a thing. And so it was easy for the relationship to unravel, for him to move on and for me to move on. Throughout the years, I'd had some reach outs from him, like once Facebook kind of became a little bit more popular, never really on Instagram, but there were a couple times where he kind of came, back in, because it's hard for these people to detach when things like that happen. But regardless, that was out. And it would be many years before I'd face it again. And this time, it would be well into my adulthood. But remember, my experience with dating is so limited. You've all heard the episode. So, but the first initial episodes, I met my ex-husband when I was 19. We were married or together for 13 years. And then we were only divorced for a short time. And then I had a boyfriend of like 2.5 years. So basically, I was never single until I was like 36 years old. And once I was single, then I finally said, you know what? I need to put at least 1.5 years into dating and having experiences dating, because I really don't really know what it's like or how to even really do it. And then finally, after that time period, I decided, okay, I'm done with this. I've dated. I kind of have a good idea of how this whole thing goes. I feel more comfortable, confident with myself in a dating type of atmosphere. So now I'm ready for a relationship. And I decided, I'm not just going to have a relationship with anybody. The relationship is going to be with someone that I actually see being a future, having as a future partner or a future husband. So I was also very selective and particular about what that was going to be and what that was going to look like. So I ended up meeting a total love bomber right out of the gate. I was not prepared for that, but I've realized now why I am attracted to that. And because of the intensity of that relationship, it totally broke my heart. Again, wasn't prepared. So I went on a 9-month dating detox mixed with major depression, which, if you can skip that part, I would definitely recommend that. Made some major life changes, lots of healing, lots of conversations, could finally feel, which is incredible in some ways, not in others, but feeling is healing. So I do recommend that. And then felt I was ready for a relationship again. So this time I decided, I was going to ask all the right questions early on, or what I thought were the right questions, because, I was then, and I am now, looking for the love of my life, who's going to be my future husband. So I met in the moment what I thought was going to be the best of the best. I was hesitant at first because things escalated very quickly. And within the first week, we saw each other 4 times. Gifts started very early on, like on gift 2. They were so thoughtful and so sweet. You're sitting across from this person or these types of people, they're usually so charismatic and so engaging and seem like they really want to listen to you. Like they're gathering a lot of data. They're gathering a lot of information about what you like, and they're going to deliver that. And that makes you feel really good. And so you fall pretty deep and you get attached pretty quickly. It's really hard not to. But there is this feeling in the pit of your stomach, but you talk yourself out of it. This person would leave notes, do really sweet things, like leave notes at restaurants, with the server saying that I was his dream girl. And sometimes the servers would even give me these notes because they thought, it was so sweet that I should actually hear what this person is saying. And it did seem too good to be true. And it did give me a little bit of PTSD from the previous relationship that I was in that was a very love bomby type of experience. But over a short period of time, I let my guard down because all the right things were being said. This person was always showing up, always willing to meet people in my life. I addressed some of the love bombing things, and this person would just be so calm and so sweet and just say, I just always want you to know, how I feel about you. So I obviously fell head over heels pretty quickly. He seemed completely enamored by me, loved my sense of style. I felt like I'd never been so seen, and even tell some of my friends, gosh, I feel like no one's ever listened to me this way before. I just felt so loved and accepted for being exactly who I was. It was very fairy tale like. We talked about marriage, maybe even having a baby. It seemed, kind of like a dream relationship to be. And then it started to shift. Slowly, things started to come up. And again, this is still over a quick period of time. We're only talking about, a total of few months here. And at first, I didn't catch them. And this is how it begins. And it's very similar to the 17-year-old boy in some of the behaviors or some of the things as far as the controlling things that started to manifest. But the difference between a 17-year-old and dating an adult male is that a 17-year-old is obviously going to be much more impulsive, much more angry, much more reactive to behaviors. They don't know how to monitor them as well. An adult is a little bit more in control of some of those things. So the most difficult part about this is once you start to fall and once you're already in and you're connected and you're feeling very close, that's then when the control slowly starts to begin. And it's small at first, something that maybe you've done that hurts their feelings. And then, of course, you feel bad. And then it's likely going to be something that, they don't want you to do, somebody that maybe you hang out with that makes them feel uncomfortable, maybe something that you wear that is fine when you're with them, but not fine when you're not with them. One moment, you're like the perfect girlfriend, the future wife. And then the next moment, you're only thinking about yourself. You're selfish. You're an attention seeker. These things kind of slowly begin to break you down. But the way that they present them, it kind of makes you feel bad that they're, feeling like you're doing these things. And so you kind of feel a little bit guilty. You feel like you want to try harder to show them like how much you do love them and how much you care and how much you respect what they're saying. And this is how it started out for me and how it began to kind of unravel, which is, again, similar to that one other relationship. It's just that was much quicker because of the impulsivity of, a young mind that's not fully developed yet. So the first initial thing that happened was it seemed, really small. It was a question about maybe a podcast episode that I had done and this person wanting to know if I was truly committed or just playing a game with them. And when it first happens, again, it's so subtle. And all you want to do is reassure this person of how much you care for them. It's odd because you do get a little bit of a Spidey sense, thinking like, wow, this kind of seems like a little bit of an insecurity or an odd reaction to something like this. This is something from a long time ago in the past. Like, why would this person be concerned about this? But it seems like you've hurt their feelings. And that's kind of how they want you to feel. So you reassure them and then you connect through the conflict and then you fall deeper. And then they go deeper. The next step could be, it could be anything. In my particular case, it was then like digging into social media, questioning past relationships, any relationships, how many times I've been engaged, how many times I've had sex, like how many partners I've had, questioning photos with friends, like content about dating, going years back through social media to find like one photo to be able to question me about. And pretty soon then you start kind of becoming mindful of posting certain things on social media because you don't want to upset them. You begin slowly changing your behaviors to keep the peace because you want to show that you respect them ultimately and that you care about their feelings. And again, this is all like starting to control your behaviors. And it doesn't seem like a big deal when you're doing these things at first, because each of them happens slowly and it just seems like one little small change, one little small shift, and then, they're happy and then it's fine. And then they go deeper. And suddenly the very thing that they loved about you from the beginning now makes you stand out a little bit too much when you're around others. And they want to dim that a little bit. Maybe not a little bit, maybe a lot of it. And whether it's your personality or what you're wearing or like what you do for a living or who you hang out with, they tell you that it attracts, the wrong type of attention or the wrong type of people, and that they want to protect you from that they care about you. So even though they're angry, they say those other things too. And then you start to think, okay, maybe I'll just tone this down a bit. After all, they are just trying to protect me. They do keep showing up. They are, saying that they love me. And you don't want to make them feel uncomfortable. You do want to show them that you care and that, again, you respect them. This is a person that has said that they cared so deeply for you. And so you dim that a little bit to show that you do care deeply. And then it goes deeper. And all of the above, by the way, I know that you all know this is against my entire belief system and against everything that, we talk about on the show, because as a woman, I do believe in expressing yourself and being truly authentic to who you are. And that's what's interesting about this, is it starts to slowly chip away at that. And the real true reasoning behind all of that, I'm not going to go into that, is because they kind of need to bring you to their level, right? And so that's why those little things start to happen to continue to try to bring you down. The challenge is that very quickly you're attached because of the way the relationship started out. And then when these conflicts happen, the resolution is met with like extreme affection, and this person, you're in like true relationship bliss for like 48 hours, but really you're stuck in this downward spiral, because when they're upset, they're very belittling and hurtful, but the way that they deliver it is in such a way that you feel like you're being hurtful to them. So you apologize and you explain how much you care, and then you stay in it. Then they forgive you. And then again, you're engulfed in this 48 hours of true bliss where they tell you how incredible you are again, and you're the most amazing girlfriend and the most beautiful woman in the world and future wife and all these things, until the next time. And there will be a next time. And you can always tell when something's up too, because the person who's always there for you, always responsive, always sweet and calm, suddenly is cold, distant. And then you know that something's up. And then you begin to think, oh gosh, what have I done this time? You start questioning yourself, your actions, your motives. What did I say? What did I not say? What did I wear that he didn't like? What was he expecting of me that I didn't realize or I didn't do? And it sounds obvious when you hear it explained like this, when you hear it out loud like this. But, when you're in it, it's really difficult to recognize it right away. And thankfully, as you all know, because we talk about this on You're It Girl all the time, we talk a lot about healing and being aware of things like this. And I have this incredible life coach. If you are looking for a life coach, she is amazing. Her name is Christina. Alenka Cullinan actually recommended her to me. She has done 2 podcast episodes with me. One that was just released. It was episode 38 called Mirror, Mirror on the Wall, Why This Man Do I Fall? But she recommended Christina to me, and she's just been a godsend, because when I was in this relationship, because we have bi-weekly calls, she is a licensed certified therapist and went the life coach route to be able to truly really help people and kind of speed up their recovery and healing. We had bi-weekly conversations, so I was well prepared when this thing had happened. And I think she knew it was a ticking time bomb, because each time, I'd have a conversation, I would tell her what happened, and she would say, okay, I say I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I think that we're going to be able to work through these things. And she's like, the next time this happens, you've got to be able to set a boundary. So when this does happen, and it likely will happen again, hopefully it doesn't, but if it does, you call me, we set the boundary, And then we wait for the reaction, and you're going to find out everything that you basically need to know. So, of course, it didn't last long. At this point, we were at like once a week of something happening. So something happens. I call her and she says, okay, now is the time. We set the boundary. And so I said the thing, and then came, the swear words, the nasty names, the derogatory comments. This person does a complete 180 on what I'd ever experienced before in their personality. And this is what happens, because here's the most important part. When you finally say no, when you finally set a boundary, it's likely just not going to go well. Healthy people are consistent. Healthy people can have regulated conversations even when there's conflict. When you're in a relationship with someone that is controlling and you set a boundary, that person realizes that they have lost control, and the reaction is likely going to be very intense and very erratic. And you will likely not have the opportunity to say much once you've set the boundary, because their heated and heightened reaction to losing control is going to be extreme. The controller is going to try to get back their power. The safest thing you can do is be prepared for this conversation and have someone that you can call immediately afterwards. A life coach is a great option. And the safest thing you can do is not be there in person to have this conversation. And I think that breakup conversations should be in person, but with this type of thing, it is best to keep your distance, because if the reaction is going to be a 180, you really don't want to be within that warpath. And so this is what I did. The ending was abrupt. I did finally stand up for myself. I said no and set a boundary. And it is as simple as that. This is the most difficult thing that you can do, but the sooner that you can set it, the sooner you're going to logically have the clarification about what has actually been transpiring in the relationship. It'll be so obvious that you can't ignore it. And ignoring it would be sacrificing yourself. So here's what you can look for. What are the early signs of this? 1, love bombing. This is a topic right now. We hear about it all the time, but this is going to be apparent in this type of relationship, and your relationship is going to escalate extremely fast. 2, excessive jealousy. They're going to question your interactions with others, show discomfort when maybe you spend time away from them. This can look different for different people. I didn't notice this because in my experience, this person just did everything with me all the time and just said that no matter what we were doing, they always wanted to spend time with me. And so it started to become apparent that this was a method of control, because as they always had me with them, they didn't have to worry about where I was or what I was doing. So it can present itself in different ways. 3, isolation, discouraging, limiting your time with family, friends, coworkers. This was more subtle in the relationship that I was in because we were inseparable. So it wasn't obvious at the time that it was happening. This person just, again, always said they wanted to be with me. And so I began spending less time with others on the nights that I didn't have my daughter. I wouldn't say it was expected that I would be with this person, but it became a routine that when it was changed or altered, definitely created discomfort within that person. 4, monitoring your behavior, frequently checking your phone, your email, your social media. Now, I am never one to give out or share my location. I do not think this is a healthy thing to do. I know a lot of people do this. A lot of, married people do this for safety reasons. I think with a parent-child relationship, this is appropriate, but this is not something that I ever do. But this monitoring can be in different ways. So in my case, it was monitoring through social media. And then 5, frequent criticism. This is, making demeaning or belittling comments to lower your self-esteem. There was criticism in my case about past actions, how, things that I said, that I wasn't, being a loyal girlfriend, that I didn't guard someone's heart, that I didn't make them feel special. This was apparent in both relationships. And things like that really make you feel like you just want to reassure this person and that you want to assure them and reassure them that they are actually special. So you'll experience the criticism, but the way that it's framed is almost making you feel like you've done something wrong that you then have to reassure them for. And so it kind of messes with your mind quite a bit. And then the last one really is mood swings, alternating between extreme affection and then sudden anger or disappointment or maybe another emotion. So they'll often go from, being extremely calm to being suddenly like cold, distant, hurt. And then after long discussions about the topic, always being something that you have done, or in my case, I have done, and then they'll return back to calm. So you're the worst girlfriend, and then you're the best girlfriend. And then after this thing happens, then you get, an extreme, again, 48 hours and maybe longer of extreme affection, like, gifts, like all the lovely sentiments and all of those things. And when these things are going on, this person will say, they don't keep records of proposed wrongs that they've created about you, but they do. And these perceived wrongs are the fuel for more to come. They'll progressively become more frequent and more consistent. That's where they are consistent. Again, healthy people are consistent, but unhealthy people are going to be consistent in these types of behaviors because they're going to happen more frequently. The behaviors will be inconsistent, but the frequency of the behaviors is going to start to be consistent. You're going to know and expect that it's going to happen again. So what do you do in this situation? You're not going to like it, but the first and hardest thing is really to recognize the signs of control, right? So listen to that feeling that you have in the pit of your stomach. It is there. And sometimes now we think like, oh my gosh, is this because I'm allowing this thing, like from other relationships, to bleed over into this thing? And you start to second guess yourself or question that. But that is there for a reason. Your body knows that something is not right. So listen to that and talk to someone about it because that thing is happening for a reason. Your body is well aware of what is happening. Recognize when a partner's behavior, this is very important, crosses from concern, their genuine concern, into control. Because it's important to understand that love should never feel like ownership or manipulation. You want to communicate boundaries clearly and early. This is where I failed, and I do sometimes fail in relationships on this because, boundaries are essential for healthy relationships. It's important to communicate those needs and boundaries, letting your partner know what is and what isn't acceptable for you. If a boyfriend or a partner reacts negatively to reasonable boundaries, then it's a red flag that person is more interested in control than mutual respect for you. And again, this is always going to be a tough one for many of us that struggle with, past trauma because there's a people-pleasing factor that comes into play in relationships. But we have got to remember not to sabotage our future peace because chaos feels comfortable in that moment. And then finally, seek support and know when to actually leave. Dealing with controlling behavior is really, really emotionally taxing. Hence the entire writer's block I had for many months. There's so many things that are going on in your mind and body. It just is really, really exhausting, especially for women that come from a traumatic background and have difficulty with asserting themselves or standing up for themselves or feeling bad that other people are feeling bad. So seek support, family, friends, know who to talk to, have a good life coach or therapist. Again, if you want my coach's information, you know where to find me. I'm happy to share it. She's truly, truly exceptional. I would have never been prepared in the way that I was in this circumstance if it wouldn't have been for her. The relationship probably would have ended and I probably would have, felt in turmoil like I usually do when a relationship ends. But instead, because of the preparation, I was able to see things so clearly and black and white that even though I, had to still mourn the loss of this person that I thought I knew, I knew that this person that was now presenting themselves is somebody that I didn't want to know or I didn't want to be with. And that was crystal clear. Black and white, crystal clear. Because when your freedom and your value and your well-being are compromised, it is time to leave. And here's the thing that I wasn't expecting, and Alora talks about this on her episode. Leaving a controlling relationship is a courageous act of love and empowerment for yourself. The sense of relief is great, but the sense of empowerment is truly greater. It makes you feel so much stronger when you actually leave. So when you're in a relationship like this, if you're in a relationship like this, some of these things are standing out to you and make you feel uncomfortable. You get that feeling in the pit of your stomach, reach out to someone and talk about it. You can always find me on social media. I'm not a therapist, but I certainly do enjoy sharing stories and helping people to find the strength within themselves to say no and step into their power. Never trade your freedom for the illusion, I know a lot of us get wrapped up in that, the illusion of love, or your truth for someone else's comfort. Protect your peace because it's the entire foundation of who you are. After all, you're it, girl. Thanks for listening.